other parents, to your community, sharing your parenting style. You know,
Absolutely.
that's really you helping, and then others, and they also helping you. And recently, I was listening to the news, and there's a study that came out on December 15 and published in the journal Natural Communications, and the focus was the social interactions are crucial for survivors. So in fulfillment, social isolation or loneliness, affect physical and mental health, even cognitive performance, and overall life expectancy. And
Mhm.
it can increase vulnerability to even dementia.
Wow.
So, as you said, reaching out, loneliness can be really detrimental for your health and your mental health and the physical, spiritual health. So, I believe
Absolutely.
like reaching out and avoid loneliness is key as well. Yeah.
I'm really glad that you brought this up so specifically, because I think feeling lonely as a mom, especially a mom for young kids, is such a big deal. We often feel alone when we're just having a kid. I have heard friends who say, as soon as I had a child, my friends never reached out anymore. As soon as I was doing this, my friends never reached out anymore. No one wanted to come visit. No one wanted to come help. No one wanted to come do all of these things. And I
Mm,
think I know that a part of that is true, because people are let the mom be a mom, right? Like, you're supposed to do it all by yourself. You're supposed to have this perfect little house with the perfect little kids and the perfect little families. And so we're going to leave the mom to do all of those things. And I mean, this might be a bit of a bold statement, but perfectionism in the relationships is impossible, because we're humans. I mean, I don't know if perfectionism in anything is possible, but for the sake of our talk today, I am, again, maybe it's a bold statement, but perfectionism in relationships is impossible. And I think one of the main reasons for that is we're humans. We're not made to be perfect people. We are imperfect, wonderful humans who do their very, very best to live in an imperfect world and an imperfect life. And I do my very, very best to care for my children the best way I can.
mm,
And for me to seek that perfect life, to seek that perfect house, is really, really hard. And I can't imagine how much guilt and shame and sadness and anxiety I will feel if this is my expectation of myself. My expectation of myself as a mom, to always have a perfect house, to always have a perfect kid, to always have a perfect looking everything. And with that kind of motto, we're imperfect people who live in an imperfect world, and we're doing our best to do what we can. I can then tap into just being a good enough mom, being a good enough parent, having a good enough house, a clean house, I mean, having just good enough kids, because that's really all we need. It's a long journey. We're going to parent these kids for a long time. And I just need to be good enough. I need to attune to their needs, and then they are going to make mistakes. I am going to make mistakes. My house is not going to look pretty. And and if I may here maybe introduce something, I kind of, whenever I heard this a while back, I was fascinated by it. So I'll share it with everyone, and hope that it brings a bit of this new maybe understanding, or to kind of house chores and the things we have to do at home, because I feel like it becomes such a hassle. And I would you kind of agree, Lucy, that like house chores and housework and
Oh,
the laundry is what I'm thinking about right now?
no, the physical load that we have with the household and chores, it's really a huge issue. It affects our mental for sure. Yeah,
Absolutely.
yes.
And so I was kind of fascinated by this when I heard it, and I'll share it with you guys. So doing housework, like we put meaning to housework, right? Like cleaning the house as a sentence or a word, cleaning the house doesn't have a moral compass, right? Like there is no morality to this. It's just a word, a sentence. We put morality to these tasks. We say, if I don't clean the house, then I'm not a good enough parent. If my kid is spending too much time watching TV, then I'm not a good enough parent. If the laundry is piled up more than a week, then I'm not a good enough person. Like, what person does that, right? We put meaning to some of these household chores that in reality there is no meaning to them. They are just chores. And I want to introduce this idea of functionality. Is my house functional right now? So what I mean by that is if I have a full sink of dishes, but I still have enough room to pile a little bit more and do dinner and get the kids to bed, that's a functional kitchen. It's a functional sink. I don't need to do anything to it right now because it's a functional sink to me right now in this moment. And I know maybe what some other people are thinking, and I would probably agree with them. And you would say, well, it doesn't look pretty. Like the aesthetic of my kitchen is a pile of dirty dishes. And I'm like, I agree with you. I agree that it probably does not look as pretty. But I think that's also the moral part of me kicking in. Do I want my sink to be pretty right now, or do I want it to be functional? There will probably be time where I will want my sink to be pretty and I will do something about it. But in the hustle and bustle of making dinner, I just want my sink to be functional.
Wow.
And yeah.
Wow, this is powerful. Dalia, just learning myself about functionality because, as you said, we try to be perfect in everything, and that's impossible. We are just human, so we cannot perform beyond our strength,
Absolutely.
in our capacity. So functionality, I believe, is a huge concept to know,
Absolutely.
especially for moms. Yeah. And it's also, I would put it as a part of your self-care because it gives you time as well for your self-care and, and reclaim who you are. That those times are very important. And what I noticed as well, the most issue or complaint of moms are lack of sleep. And then if you introduce the functionality, you'll give yourself enough time for sleep, right? So,
Absolutely.
so
Absolutely.
yeah, and lack of sleep can also lead to anxiety, to depression. So this is, but if you know how to function, that's, you make more room for yourself, right? Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I think a lot of things will not take priority. So I think a lot of times, and I 100% I understand that because I have a house too, and I have my own chores. So I think a lot of times we put priority to making the house look a certain way or doing something a certain way just for the sake of kind of what you were even talking about earlier, Lucy, of just this idea of like, well, this is how my parents did it, this is how my grandparents did it, this is just the expectation to be, is that you have to have a clean sink all the time. And the reality is that's not true. And again, if the sink, I'm using the example of the sink still, but if the sink is no longer functional for me, then to me, I'm like, okay, you know, there is no room in the sink, or I'm out of cups for the little ones, so I am now going to clean the sink, or I'm going to give myself permission to only wash the 5 cups that I need so that I can have dinner on the table. And then when the kids are in bed, I can do the rest. So I can give myself permission to look at how functional something is and then do a plan accordingly. So the functionality of something, and then I can give myself permission. I don't have to beat myself up because I don't have time to do something. Because if that's the case, then I'm prioritizing something else. I'm prioritizing caring for my kid when he was crying. I'm prioritizing putting my little one to bed if that's what needs to happen. I'm prioritizing a different thing. And that prioritization could 100% and absolutely be my own sanity and my own self-care. Because if I don't have those things in place, if I am not a functional person anymore because I am exhausted, then how can I be functional for other people or my work or my kids or my house or anything around me?
Absolutely true. Thank you again. And yes, this is a new tool that everyone needs to really implement in their own lives. Yeah. And myself, I rely on a very few simple methods for me to boost energy, as and so that helps me, to get out of that funk feeling. Is when I'm cleaning or I'm doing laundry and I feel like haggard, and
Yeah.
so what I do, I will pause, close my eyes for 15 minutes,
Mm.
and then during that time, really, I can relax, I can think about anything else beside the chores that I'm doing, and then it gives me a time to recover, and can boost my energy and start over again.
Yeah.
So when you make time with, how to prioritize, and also the functionality concept, you can allow yourself to get that time to just pause and just, it's a kind of meditation for 15 minutes or something.
Yeah,
It's a
of course.
self-reflection.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's amazing.